If you finish this full series, you will end up with a donut. A delicious donut. Fat donut. So let's get started.
Andrew Price, aka Blender Guru, the man who taught the world how to create a donut in 3D.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
You've held the hands of millions of 3D artists.
My parents were very disappointed in me because I got a really low score in high school. You know, Blender didn't have an undo function.
What?
We're meant to be together. This is true love. I went online and I searched, how long does the average international relationship last? No! And it said about...
Your tutorial is now impacting a movie that won an Academy Award.
You can make a tutorial on something you've just learned, and you could have learned Blender last week. I know my mom was definitely a huge motivating force. I don't think I could take that risk today.
Before you became Blender Guru, who was Andrew Price? Andrew, you are arguably one of the most loved and famous individuals when it comes to the 3D space. Of course, you've held you've held the hands of millions of 3D artists, especially in the very beginning journey of them starting to realize what they can do, what their potentials are over the past few years. And that's also thanks to the Blender Donut tutorial series that has taken the world by storm. So first of all, we'd love to say thank you so much for coming to the podcast and giving us your time.
Yeah.
And second, we know that Blender 4.0 just released last night. And we know that with every major Blender release, you actually release your own donut tutorial series. Am I right?
Yes, every major one is what I'm aiming for. So 3.0 was the previous one. 4.0 came out today. So literally straight after this finishes, I'm uploading part 1. Yeah.
Okay. Then we have to celebrate
I think we're going to celebrate, right?
Okay.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
Celebrate.
Oh my goodness.
Go ahead.
What are you going to do with those? That's like,
what is
that, 24 donuts?
You know, this reminded me of the Blender tutorial that I saw from Andrew, the sprinkles that he did. That was the previous donut tutorial that he did.
Yes. Andrew, do you mind? I'm sorry, you don't have a donut? Do you
I know, I don't have
storage
one.
full of donuts in secret?
No, unfortunately. I'd love to partake, but take a bite, enjoy.
We'll just take one cheers just to congratulate you on the new series.
Thanks, guys. How is it?
All right.
Oh, so
Actually,
good.
very good. Actually, very good. Krispy Kreme is really good.
Actually, do you like donuts?
I mean, I don't eat them that often, like ever. But yeah, I mean, hey, they are very delicious, but that's the problem, right? That's the modern problem. Things are too delicious. So I try to avoid them, but you know.
you know, when we bought these donuts, I was telling Faraz that we usually intermittent fasting in the morning. Yeah. We usually intermittent fast in the morning. And we don't eat, and we don't eat sugar at all. But for this podcast, we had to get donuts to just, nice. Because it was amazing.
Special occasion
tutorials, and for us, I mean, for Faraz also, because Faraz was the one who introduced you to me in the beginning, and it has been crazy.
Yeah, actually,
that's awesome.
I want to know one thing. Before you became Blender Guru, and before you were known for the amazing tutorials that you've created on YouTube, who was Andrew Price?
Who was me? Yeah. I mean, so I started using Blender back in 2003. I was in grade 10 of high school. And I was just really into the game Need for Speed. You know the one?
Yeah,
it was Need for Speed 2 and 3. This was like really super early. And I was playing it one night instead of doing homework, obviously. And just watching the car like on the turntable, and I was just like hooked. I wanted to have like a 3D car. Like that was my dream. Feel like kind of owning the car in a way if I made it. And so I just searched, 3D software. And I think I came first across like a piece of software called Animator with the 8 in the name. Really just archaic, made no success with that. And then I saw an image of a red sports car, and it was hosted on blender.org. And so that was how I discovered Blender, was because of that image. And I figured, okay, it's free software. There's no school that teaches it, but presumably if somebody else was able to learn it themselves to make that car, then presumably I should be able to too. So that was the whole motivation to learn Blender. So, I mean, it was actually 4 years until I actually created a car using Blender.
Wow.
Because I mean, it was so hard to use. But
did you have a donut guy for yourself? Were you looking at someone?
There was, so the old one was the gingerbread man tutorial. Oh. Really old school. It was a text only tutorial. It was on a blog. I think it was actually by the guy who made Blender Nation, Bart Veldhuizen, who just wrote this up. And it was, your basic first steps in Blender was you made a gingerbread man.
Wow. So we are, here because of the donut man. You were there because of the gingerbread man.
Gingerbread man. That's right. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here.
Go attack him. We should have bought some gingerbread.
Gingerbread, just to go back to the origin. Well, now we know the origin of the story. So this was text-based, and then you were reading literally and then copying that in your mind and then taking it to Blender. Yeah.
I mean, it's you kind of forget, but like text is a really difficult medium to learn from with just screenshots. Cause like screenshots take time to create. So they don't put screenshots for everything. So it's like every other step they'll put a screenshot, and other times they'll just say you have to click this, then this, and then this. And then you won't be able to find it. And then that's it. You could spend like 3 hours trying to find what does he mean when he says, flip the normals. How do I do that? Because he didn't explain it. So what do I do? And so it was a really a very time-consuming process to learn. Video has just like changed the game for education. It's so much easier. So it was just like learning piecemeal, one by one. I think I made like a mine animation at one point, probably another one of Bart's tutorials. And then at some point, that's right. So I finished school a few years later, and my parents were very disappointed in me because I got a really low score in high school. So in Australia, we have, it's called an OP score when you finish high school. I don't think they have them anymore. But you're scored, really embarrassing. I almost don't want to say it, but you're scored from 1 to 25.
Right.
And so 1 is the best. So very few people get a 1. If you're like 1 to 5, that means like you're pretty well guaranteed to go to any university you want. Right. 1 to 10, it's like you've got some options. I was 19. So I
took
really
the slider all
was
the
bad
way.
at school. All the way. So to be honest, I found school really difficult because I could not pay attention. It was really... I don't know what it is. Maybe I missed the bit where everyone felt motivated for their future, but like it wasn't fun. So I didn't want to learn anything. And so I just phoned it in, barely passed.
And let me ask you a question, if you don't mind me. All this time, were you still learning Blender at home though? Your own time?
I was. Okay. So I would go, I had a job at the time. I had a number of jobs. I worked at Woolworths, which is the kind of grocery store chain of Australia. I was a checkout chick, we called them, if I'm a dude. Then I worked for Kirby Vacuum Cleaners, selling vacuum cleaners door to door. Then I went back to Woolworths because that job sucked. Then I worked as a kind of like a tradie, but like without skills. So manual labor. So the kind of job you can do where if you have 2 arms and 2 legs, you get that job. Okay. Like lift these boxes, unload this trailer, clean out these porta potties. Basically every day they would phone you up with a new job. And so I'd have to drive over to this work site and they'd say, here, you're shoveling bricks and rubble today. And then in the evenings I'd come home and I would do something in Blender. And so my goal was to build up enough of a portfolio that somebody would want to either give me a job in a studio or give me work as a freelancer. And for some reason, I thought if I made tutorials, then people would see those tutorials and be more likely to give me a job. I don't know why I thought that, because it's not really the same user, somebody who needs work and somebody who'd watch a tutorial. But I started thinking that. So I created the website Blender Guru, and I started uploading videos to Vimeo because YouTube at the time had a 10-minute upload limit. And so for the first 4 years of Blender Guru, I was actually just uploading to Vimeo.
Right. How long were those videos?
Oh, those were, like 20, 30 minutes long. They weren't terribly long, but my first tutorial was how to make a car tire, because I figured out this method of you create one section and then you put it around a curve and you link it up. And I thought it was very cool that I'd figured this out, so I made a tutorial on it. And then I made a grass tutorial. That was where my first big hit, which back in the day meant like maybe 10,000 views. It was like, whoa.
Right. No, that was a big hit.
That was a big hit.
Yeah. So, and then coincidentally, I went to my first ever Blender conference in 2009. And at the conference, Blender was, super early days. And Ton Roosendahl, the founder of Blender, got up on stage and said, one of the things I'm hearing is a lot of studios and schools want to learn Blender, but there's not enough education. So there's an opportunity for somebody to sell education. And I was like, well, maybe I could, instead of getting a job as a freelancer, I could just sell education, sell training videos, basically. And so, then I went back home and I started working on my first product, which was an ebook called The Wow Factor, which I sold for $47 each, a hefty price tag, actually, now thinking back on it. For just an ebook. What's that?
What was in that ebook?
So the Wow Factor was just about how to use Blender's compositor to do glow and glare effects and lens distortion, all the kind of post effects that you want to do. And it was it was a relatively new feature of Blender. And I figured, well, I could just focus on that, do a series of tutorials in text form. I thought, well, if I can sell enough copies of that to replicate my full-time income, then I could quit my job. And
how did you market ebooks in that age? Like, was it YouTube prominently or other platforms?
Yeah, so actually, really funnily, around the time I went to, just before the Blender conference, my dad bought me a Christmas gift, which was a kind of like an online sales marketing course. So it was by a guy who was teaching people how to sell online, which was a very novel concept back in 2008. And so it was all about how to create a newsletter list. You create a piece of content that's free but high value, and they can get it if they subscribe to your newsletter. You tease out the release. You keep giving more value, and then say, and there's even more value in this product. And then you get the right people who are interested in the product because they clicked on the free stuff, and then you just bombard them with emails just nonstop. I mean, it was really like the tactics he taught in this course were really super aggressive. If you did them today, you would maybe even be breaking like GDPR practices. It was like just lots of emails. And so, but it worked. So actually, the other thing that was a huge motivator for that book was I met my now wife, but then girlfriend at a party. So she's Korean. She came to Australia. She was studying. And then she said, I have to go back home to Korea to finish my studies. And I was like, well, if I can't quit my job in time to go visit her, then we're going to break up. And we're meant to be together. This is true love, So I was like, well, I have to sell this book. And I went online and I searched, how long does the average international relationship last? And it said
did you actually search?
How long does this relationship last?
How long does an international relationship last? Yeah.
That is in your browsing history right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what was the answer, actually?
And it said 3 months. Okay. It said three months is about as long as people can go before they go, this person is becoming a distant memory, cut ties, So I was like, all right, that's my time limit. So I wrote the book, marketed it, sold it within a 3-month period, literally. And And it worked. I mean, like in the first month, I replicated my year's salary, which was at the time Break and Brick. And yeah, actually I was a debt collector. That was my last job I ever had. I was a debt collector. So working for Toyota,
I can't imagine, Andrew,
calling
you
people
as a
up on
debt
the phone.
collector. You are teaching people now with the soft voice. How did you call? Hello, can you pay money, please?
You gotta pay up right now.
Yeah, basically.
That was it, right?
I mean, yeah, it was like, yeah. Most people actually, this is kind of the funny thing about debt collecting. Most people, they just made a mistake. They forgot to pay the bill. Okay, so it's like 90% of the calls is like, oh shit, sorry, I'll pay it now. And then you get like 5 to 8% who are like, I can't pay it. What can I do? And then you get like 2% who hate your guts. And they just want to scream down the phone at you. So it's not too bad. It's most of the day is like non-eventful, and then you get one call and it just sets you off.
I can imagine. Now, what's crazy to me, and I wanted to actually ask you this question, because you said you didn't have great grades, which means you weren't particularly inspired at school. But you still had to drive to come back home and train on Blender. And the problem with so many people today, and I'm generalizing, of course, I don't know those people, but is they might be doing well in school, but they come back home and they have all this pocket of time and they're not actually working on making themselves better or learning something or doing something that can eventually help them in the long term. So what was your drive when you were not doing well in school, but coming back home to still go for Blender? Because some days you probably didn't feel like it, right?
Most days,
most days you didn't feel like. What was the drive for you at that time? You had no idea this is going to make you this famous and this loved by the community because of your tutorials. You had no idea back then. What was the drive?
Yeah. I mean, really, the drive was just. I mean, I was it was a tough job. Like going out during the day, it was a shitty job. It really sucked. And yeah, it's, I don't know. I definitely know there are some people who, despite that position, would find it difficult. And I mean, yeah, it definitely is difficult, especially when you're really tired to go home and learn. The one thing I was like 3D World magazine was how you learned about the industry back in the day, prior to forums and Reddit and things like that. And I guess just seeing this top, like the making of Transformers, and it was whoa, just seeing that people actually had this job doing cool stuff all day. And it was back in a studio in Vancouver or London or LA. And I loved that. I knew that I really loved that. And it's, I mean, I think definitely if you were too comfortable, that would be hard. Like if you had a pretty good job, it was kind of cushy, maybe an office job, maybe not what you really were inspired to do, but just cushy enough, it might be hard to really, to learn. I mean, obviously, you've got to be hungry for it. Some people literally just don't actually care enough. They don't want to really have a job that much. They're kind of fine just on cruise control. I don't know. Yeah, everyone's different. Everyone's story is different. I know my mom was definitely a huge motivating force because she was just...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Just like, I'm not going to support you. Like, you need to get a job. You can't... And that was the other thing. Like, I'm like, can't I just learn Blender? Because I was living at home at the time, straight out of high school. I'm like, why can't I just do this? Like, can't I just sit at home and learn Blender until I can get a job at a studio? And she's like, no, you got to earn money today. You can't sit in some indefinite time period, 3, 4, 5 years in the future. You're going to be 30 years old, still living at home, saying one day I'll get a job at a studio. She's like, no. So she lit a fire under me. I was like, no, go get a job now. Go sell vacuum cleaners, doing the worst possible jobs possible. And then in your evenings and your weekends, instead of going out with friends, then you can learn Blender. And that's really tough. That sucks to hear as a kid. It definitely works.
But I want to mention that I heard this saying that the most dangerous spot to be is that your comfort zone. What you mentioned about the job that you like it's not that bad. That paid, that's the worst place to be because you are not motivated to quit that job.
Yeah.
You are not also motivated to really
and you're not happy in the current position you're in, but you don't have enough pain to push you and go towards a new goal, a new dream.
And that's the biggest problem that I see like throughout even my friends, because they are in that comfortable position that they don't love it, but it's not that painful to leave, and they will stay in that position forever. That's the problem.
Yeah. I think also it was a pretty low risk time of my life. Like now that I've got a family and I got kids and I got a mortgage payment, I don't think I could take that risk today.
Again,
if I had a job, if I had that job at Toyota calling people up on the phone and it was paying the bills and I had to look after the kids, I had house duties, I don't think I could take that huge gamble. So I definitely like looking back, it was just kind of like lucky that I got into it. And I started that journey really early before I had any responsibilities really.
I just want to add to that and say that as a kid, because we've been in similar scenarios where we had tough times as a kid, and that pushed us to start working early at an early age. Same for us. And I would say as a kid, and if anybody's listening and watching right now, you hated that moment when your mom or your dad comes to you and they don't want to pay you for that one thing that you really want, or going to parties with your friend. You can't afford to go to all of them because you wanted to go to all of them, and you want to go out as much as you can because that's all your friends are doing. You hate that moment, but looking at what we've managed to do as well, it's the best thing that can happen to you if you know how to turn it around. It is literally the best thing that can happen to you. And I'm seeing that with you as well. So it's not just, so it was your mother, of course, it was the tough job you were working.
The relationship.
That was also
the
timer.
So what happened after that? The book is out. You sold enough that you can quit your job.
That must have given him some ideas, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was. I remember it actually. The launch night, because I told people the book is going to come out for sale on this date, and having never sold a product before, you don't actually know how many steps to get there yet. You don't know there's the sales page. There's you have to check that the payments work through a payment processor. You have to check that they're actually getting the product in the end. There's so much. And so it was all like the last 48 hours. I don't think I slept at all. And I remember a few hours before it launched, what I'd done was I'd send people the free materials, like the chapters. If you sign up for this newsletter, you get this free chapter of the book kind of thing. And I hosted the chapter on my website, just kind of like in an index root directory kind of thing. And that I had also stored, but didn't realize it was accessible, the final book. So
for free.
So what somebody realized was if you just remove the chapter thing and just went to the root directory, there's a list of all the files Andrew's uploaded. And look, here's the final book. And so he was pasting in the comments of all my my material, all my works, the content, here's the book, and he just sharing it to everyone moments before it was going to go live. So I remember sitting there that night, literally pulling out my hair because it was so much stress. I never experienced it before, and it was and miraculously, it didn't matter. I mean, for one, I could just remove the book from the folder, so it erased, but it was already out there. And it didn't really matter because people wanted to support me enough. And so, it was it sold like hotcakes on the first day, which was crazy. Yeah.
Amazing. And then after the book story, did you dived into YouTube and then you started doing tutorials? Was that the moment that Blender Guru as we know it now on YouTube formed and shaped?
Yeah, kind of. It was, so it was a big moment. I announced I'm going full-time Blender Guru, so it was a video, full-time announcement.
Oh, yeah.
And then I started doing themed releases. So I did a whole month on weather. So I did one tutorial every single week, one on rain, one on snow, one on wind, something else. And I started doing these. And then I guess eventually my second product was the Nature Academy. So that was a training course. It was just, and this time it was video, because video was finally coming in. So I created a video course series on how to do nature. So how to make a tree, how to make grass, how to make a forest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A whole similar lead up process for that, a larger price point. I think that was like 2 years later. I was recording these videos. So I flew to Korea, visited my girlfriend. That was great.
And then I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, that was great. Flew back and forth twice in the year, so there was like a 3 month and then another 3 month gap.
Make sure it doesn't.
Okay, so today is January. I have to be there by March. I don't care. I'm going to be there by March.
Exactly. No, it was literally that. Like I don't know who said 3 months, but I just trusted it and I went with it. But yeah,
it must have been incredible.
I mean, it worked, right?
Yeah. Incredible.
It worked. This is peer reviewed. This research is peer reviewed now. It's tested by.
We can approve it right here.
Yeah, exactly. So then, so I recorded that. So then my girlfriend flew to Australia. And we lived together for a year, and I was recording this Nature Academy product then. And then there was probably another 2-3 year gap before the Architecture Academy, which was similar story, video course on making architecture in Blender. I think like 13 different modules, like a house, an interior, a bedroom, a yada, yada, yada. And then I think through that process, I was sort of thinking like, because I had a team at that point. I'd hired a few artists, like, can you make me some furniture so that I can put it in the Architecture Academy as like models that you need to download? And then I was doing this, and then also I was using textures.com for like all the textures on the site. And at the time, textures.com, which was CG Textures back in the day, it was just like the photo. So the texture was just the color, the base color map, basically.
Right.
And then you had to generate the normal map, displacement map, gloss map.
And all that,
The PBR maps that you need for a material to actually look good, you had to generate it yourself. So in every tutorial that I made, I was like, okay, so we're going to go to textures.com. We're going to give them money. Then we're going to get Crazy Bump, which is a second piece of software. Use that and use these slider adjustments to get the gloss map and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, so thousands of people follow this tutorial. All of them generate the exact same series of PBR maps. This makes no sense. Like, why not just make a website?
Lots of time wasted,
Yeah, a lot of time wasted. And wouldn't people like a website that gives you all the PBR maps, in one go? So that was Poliigon. So that took a year and a half, I think, to actually from idea to launch. And that launched a couple of months after Megascans launched, which was just like, damn.
Great timing.
Great timing. We've just been on that ride ever since, essentially. So making the donut tutorial, making videos on Blender Guru, and then Poliigon as a large team, 20 to 30 people that are just making content and making the website and making software and plugins and things. So that's kind of the story.
Throughout this time, when did the donut idea come around? Because you said you did different modules, you did architecture, you did nature, which is very interesting. I want to talk about content creation later on in the podcast. We'll cover the themed content, but how did the donut idea come around?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so my mom actually, she was like, I'm seeing some of the comments in your videos. Some people say they want a beginner tutorial. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I've seen those comments. No, I'm not. It's too boring. Like, I like the fun stuff, the advanced stuff where you're pushing the envelope, trying to improve your own abilities whilst you make a tutorial, really. Because that's where you scratch that itch. I'm like, I'm not going to do a beginner tutorial because it's just like so boring, like how to use Blender. But eventually, I think I could see that like there was enough need for it. And I'm like, you know what the hell, I'll give it a go. So I came up with the idea of like, okay, so we've got to teach this parts of Blender. It has to have some modeling, it has to have some rendering, some materials, some texturing. What could I do? And I was like brainstorming ideas. And I found the folder actually the other day on Dropbox of like some of my old ideas. And I had a chair, a snowman, and a donut. And I made them. I created the images and I showed my wife, girlfriend, now wife. I showed her and said, which one of these would you want to make as a beginner? And she just pointed to the donut and goes, that one, definitely. I'm like, all right.
My God, thanks to her. She chose donut. Else we had to bring snowman and chairs on this podcast.
We couldn't do that.
Exactly. You have to get a snowman in with you.
Not in Dubai.
Not in Dubai. We can't do that here. Okay, thanks to her, she chose donut. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, that was it. So then I created that, and it was actually like right before a Blender conference. So it was like rushed. I didn't realize how many parts it was going to be. It was so long. And then I had a cold as well. Like halfway through, I developed like a chest cold. So it was like really like poorly done. And then launched it, and it was like hands down the most popular videos that I'd ever done. Like by a mile, like 10 times probably anything else done previously.
Was it an instant hit, or did it take time for it to, be seen by the world? The donut tutorial. Yeah,
it was. I'd say pretty well. Like, I mean, I could tell already just with like my own viewership on. I think I was using YouTube at the time. Yeah. So at some point I switched from Vimeo to YouTube because they removed their 10-minute upload limit. And I could tell like straight away all my viewers were watching it. So that was a good sign. And then the numbers just kept climbing, especially and it was just like, I'd log into YouTube some days and then I'd just be like, wait a minute, like 500,000. It was at like 400,000 like a month ago. It's still going up. It was just obscene numbers I'd never seen. And then like a year later and it's like 1 million. And I'm like, it's just more people constantly clicking on it. And then, it's, that's basically it.
What was the mindset that, because prior to donut tutorial, you were doing paid training courses. Why didn't you do a paid tutorial for Blender for beginners? What was the mindset that let's do it for free? And ever since you've done, I think 2 more that are free on YouTube too still.
Yeah. I don't know. Cause like I was seeing that the other day, there's a lot of like paid beginner courses and there's definitely like an eagerness for it. Cause like people have money to spend on their own education to better themselves. I don't know why I made it free.
But thank you. You made it for, thank you so much that you made it for free. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing is that it's by far like the biggest driver for the channel. And so as what do they call it? Like a loss leader.
Yeah.
You think of like a grocery store, right? They might sell like a hot item that everybody needs. I don't know, paper towels or something like that at below price. Like they're losing money. And the whole point is it gets you to the store because everyone's like these idiots. They're just selling paper towels for 10 cents each. So they go in there and then whilst they're there, they do their week's worth of grocery shopping. So it's the same thing. Like you give away your beginner series, but then at the same time, you've got this whole viewership who is now on your channel and then more likely to buy other stuff. That's the way I sort of view it anyway, but definitely would have made way more money as a product.
But by no means we are asking to make it a paid course for the version 4. Please release it for free. Else everybody will cancel this podcast.
But no, he's right. The marketing tactic has been there for long. Costco does the same thing. Remember the hot dogs and the pizza and the ice cream? They sell it for like $1.
It's like there's no way.
And the ice cream's this tall. And I'm like, there's no way you're making money on that.
It works.
But it's the best thing because people literally come there to get pizza and then they just like, I need to buy some groceries, and then they just buy it. So it's a smart strategy, but you didn't just do it as a marketing tactic, because I remember precisely even talking to some of our friends at the time, because when people were watching your tutorial, they didn't even know that you actually found Poliigon. Like the way you even talked about Poliigon was so subtle and not overselling at all. You were focused on the education rather than, hey, this is the Blender Donut tutorial. Now pay me for everything else. It was a very subtle.
I remember Faraz after a few months, he came to me. Did you know Blender Guru owned Poliigon? I was like, no. I was like, no, he owned Poliigon. I was like, oh okay.
Wow, interesting. I thought it was super obvious.
No,
Okay.
because you never
Wow.
mentioned, because in your videos, what happens is, I'm going to use Poliigon to bring this texture or bring this item in, but you never mentioned like, this is my site or go and get it from there.
Didn't think about it, not even once when we were doing the
So
tutorials.
we didn't know that for a very long time, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was-
there you go.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
But it also shows that you actually didn't care so much about promoting in those videos. You actually cared about the education part. And that is what has probably been the reason why so many people have loved doing those tutorials and learning from you, because it's a very genuine approach. And I want us to talk about that as well, because there are many different ways you can educate people. Like you mentioned, there was the text-based, and then there came video, and then there's different styles that you can teach people. And I think you've definitely heard this comparison, and I know a lot of people make it the Ian Hubert style of doing tutorials, which is 1 minute.
Lazy
I'll show you
tutorials,
something really cool, and then you go and make it yourself. But you gotta watch that. You get really tempted, and then you have to figure out in between how to make that yourself. Whereas your tutorials, you're like, I'm gonna hold your hands. Don't worry, I understand you don't know anything, and I'll walk you through every step. And I believe that you need both of these types of tutorials to make a successful community. And that is exactly what attracted me towards Blender. So, funny story, I was a Cinema 4D guy, and I remember precisely what happened. A few months in, I'm learning from, I don't want to mention the names because I'm going to say something about this, because I was following this tutorial and they were talking about effectors, cloners, and all this stuff, but they weren't actually explaining how it worked. They were just asking you to do them and follow their footsteps. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on here. So I was already, kind of lost. And I saw Ian Hubert's Blender conference video where he showed a bunch of fancy stuff on how he takes images and then, uses the UV to put them on and create a really cool scene. And that was like, I want to be able to do that. And then how do I do that? Then I started looking for tutorials, and my friend, Catalyst, shout out to him, he recommended your tutorials. And I opened it, I'm like, donuts, that's pretty simple. I want to make that donut. And then when I walked into your tutorials, what was amazing was your tone, your pacing, and the fact that you were genuinely walking me through every step. Everything that you were mentioning, you would explain what they did, what the modifiers are for, every single step of the way. So you never felt lost. And I think that is the reason why not only your tutorials have worked, but the entire community is sort of shifting towards Blender. Of course, it's a free software. I understand that. But just because it's free doesn't mean everyone's just going to jump into it, because if they don't know how to use the software, they're not going to use it. So I think the tutorials you've created have definitely changed the way people consume and learn. And I know a lot of people in the comments are going to say thank you to you as well for teaching them Blender.
That's nice. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I call it like edutainment, the Ian Hubert style. And I've started doing it with, I did one on The Shining recently, the Family Guy video.
Amazing video.
That was a
nice,
freaking
thanks.
good video.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Didn't make much money. YouTube flagged it for
Because of blood,
gore.
right?
Yeah, the blood. Yeah. So it made so basically with YouTube, it's like if it's got sensitive material, advertisers don't want to advertise on it, because it's like, I don't want my Coca-Cola brand associated with blood, so no thank you. So you get put in this bottom of the pile, only the most really risky companies are like, yeah, I'll take the risk. So I did the math. It's 11 times less money per view on a video like that. Really,
So
it's
you
really
put
crazy.
orange juice or something.
Yeah, you could have changed it to orange juice.
I know.
Change the color of the
I know,
material.
exactly.
Rainbow coming out.
Exactly, yeah. But, I kind of knew that going into it. I just didn't realize it was that big of a hit. But anyway. But yeah, it's kind of like, I think YouTube calls it hero content and help content. So your hero content, they use the example of Casey Neistat. He made a video where it was him snowboarding through New York after it had snowed, and it blew up and everyone discovered him. But his regular content is, other stuff. But he's got these pillar pieces where it's a really big splash and everyone goes and watches it. So that's kind of how I view it. It's you need those pieces to get a new audience. And then you need the kind of the boring stuff, the how to actually do this one by one.
Right.
That's a smaller audience, but if you've already hooked them with the other stuff, then you've grown the audience whilst also giving kind of substance. yeah, I don't know. It's kind of how I view it.
It's a very good tip, actually, for anybody who wants to create content.
I want to talk about the impact that your tutorial had. Last year, we watched a movie that won an Academy Award.
Multiple Academy Awards.
Yeah, 7 Academy Awards. Everything, everywhere, all at once. And during that movie, there was a bagel throughout the movie, the entire movie. And then we saw the editor, Ben, I think the VFX team, Ben Brewer, came and talked about how your tutorial inspired the whole team, the donut tutorial, to be inside the movie. How did it feel to know that was your crazy. Tutorial is now impacting a movie that won an Academy Award?
That was really wild. Like, I remember actually watching it because I watched it before I'd heard about it. And I was just at home with my wife. I was watching on TV. And then, like, the bagel came up and it had, like, the little sesame seeds on it. And I was like that meme of, like, the Futurama guy. I was like, I was like, that's very close.
You didn't know. They didn't tell you before you watched the movie. You didn't know that.
No. Because, like, I didn't, I didn't think it was even, like, out there yet. And then it was, like, a few months later, it was in a BBC article.
Yes.
He mentioned the donut, and a few people linked it to me, and then later on actually said it in like an interview with them as well. And then I got like major brownie points with the wife because like she loved that movie. So I was like, yes, take that.
Dude, that's huge to be able to have YouTube tutorials. And I'm not downplaying YouTube tutorials. I'm just trying to compare because I'm sure when you first started, many years ago, YouTube tutorials for a lot of people wasn't probably a cool thing to do. But now your YouTube tutorials have ended up inspiring creatives in a movie that has done so well. And that just goes to show the impact of what education can do. And the fact that people are actually like yourself spending time to share the knowledge. Because you, like you mentioned, you could have spent your time just making advanced material that beginners could never use. And that would have been more fun for you, right? Yeah. And we get that too. Sometimes you just want to create your own things and not care about sharing it. Because that takes double the amount of time, probably triple. Because the moment you want to go ahead and break this down, you got to dumb it down, simplify it so that if someone has never heard of the terms, they understand. So the fact that you spend that time, that's why it's been so inspirational to people. So it's amazing. I don't know. We felt really surprised when we saw that video.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I would also say it's actually a really good way to learn yourself, because if you're forced to teach somebody something you've learned, it reveals immediately all of the blind spots that you have, where you are like, yeah, you check this box, and then if someone goes like, why are you checking that box? You go like, and you're like, because somebody else told me to check the box. And you realize like, I actually don't know what that thing does. So in order to teach it, you have to like look up the documentation, and then you read the documentation. You go, that doesn't do what I thought it did. If anything, that's making the problem worse. And that's why I had to do this extra whole other step later on to fix what that thing started. And so you end up like getting it down to like, it's like first fundamentals, piece by piece. And it's really good. It enables you to not, because you can very quickly end up in a workflow where you're, and I actually see it a lot, where you have a pipeline, like say like lighting, right? If you've got the wrong color transform set up, right? So you're not working in linear space for your 3D software. You could have like basically what Blender had before, the sRGB space, which was not linear. Yeah. So a really narrow dynamic range. And so therefore, if you've got sunlight coming in through a window, you can't actually make the sunlight as bright as it should be, because it just clips immediately. So to fix that, you make the sunlight not as bright so that it doesn't clip. But then it doesn't bounce off the room like it should. So then you add in extra lamps, like a bounce lamp here, a bounce lamp here, another bounce lamp here. And then you're doing a post-processing step where you're trying to like increase the levels. And so you do this whole pipeline just to fix something that if you knew it was there would have made this whole other stuff redundant, and it will make a better result doing it the correct way. And you don't get that without understanding from like a first principles level how it works. So I definitely recommend it. Like even just to teach yourself Blender, if you want to start a YouTube channel, to teach people what you've learned, that's a great, and people think like, oh, I shouldn't be teaching because I'm still a beginner myself. I was a beginner and I was teaching, and I don't know why I had like the confidence to do it back then, but it's totally fine to do. You can make a tutorial on something you've just learned, and you could have learned Blender last week. There's nothing wrong with that, because it forces you also to learn and understand things thoroughly. So it's a great, and it's going to make you some money. Just post it up on YouTube. You get some ad revenue as well. Like it's a great idea.
No,
Dude, I love that.
100% agree.
We can go two places from here. You want to take education or content creation?
No, there is something I cannot stop thinking about. What if Andrew's wife chose chair or snow?
Oh my God, you're so thinking.
But this Oscar movie would have a different element in it. Now think about it.
There you go.
Imagine if they would do chairs or a snowman. It's crazy how many things would have changed by that simple decision a few years ago.
You got to go thank him later.
Yeah.
It's the only way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Maybe she can
true.
take the credit for it. I told you. I gave you the idea. You wouldn't be
Then
the
he's
Oscar
not going to
movie.
show the podcast because he's got the bragging rights right now.
Yeah.
There's two places we can take this.
Education, definitely.
Okay.
I want to talk about education.
What is your opinion on the current education system in the world? Because we went through the traditional education system where you're just learning math, sciences, all
Hated it.
Yeah, it's the boring stuff. It's necessary, I would say, up until a certain age, because you don't know what you want to do. But at some point, for example, for me, I studied computer science. Up until the first day of my university, I had no idea what coding meant. I thought it's just, my parents would tell me, you're good at fixing computers, because, I would do the Control-Alt-Delete when something would go wrong on their computer, and they were like, hey, you should try computer science. Just because there weren't any coding classes during college or during high school, I never actually realized what I wanted to do. So I got my degree, but I kind of wasted that 2-3 years, because after university, I was just doing esports. I was doing 3D. So technically speaking, I had a lot of problem with the education system. We want to know your thoughts on the current education system, because you're clearly doing something different. Your education and the traditional way of teaching is very, very far apart.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're a teacher today, I don't think you have a lot of freedom to shake things up and do things in necessarily a different way, because there's a curriculum that some guys in the state parliament or whatever said, oh, this is what we need to teach for science. And then you go like, oh God, why are we teaching them this stuff? But it's like, okay. And then you got textbooks that the school has picked up, and so you got to have a textbook. But obviously that's not how to get kids excited about something. I think what people like Mark Rober have done really well is focus on the thing to hook you, to get you curious, and think, how does that work? How can I do that? And the process of like, okay, I want to build that thing, right? I want to build a device so that when my door opens, a light turns on, right, in my bedroom. Like, how would I do that? Well, it's like, you got to learn this, you got to have a little chipset, you got to have a sensor, you got to, and through the process, you've learned all those things, and you've learned them so much better than you ever would by just reading something in a textbook. The problem is that's not really, you can't check a box like having a whole classroom of 30 odd kids, which are just from the area surrounding the school, from different family incomes. Some of them care about learning, some of them don't. And they're just filling the day like, okay, kids, get excited about science. Go and build something. Well, you're going to have 30 kids doing jack all. And you could try to excite them. You can try, and obviously there are good teachers and there are bad teachers. But it's still a very difficult thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm like tempted to go like, okay, so just get kids who are interested in a thing and then give them the class on that, and sort of break up the school, like have the science teachers teaching the science, But then there are obviously in society, you need to also know math. You can't just, check out of math. I'm not going to do math. You have to know it, right? So you have to do these things that you don't want to learn. I think what's interesting, I hated math. It was one of my least favorite subjects.
Hey, high five, man. Let's go.
Yeah.
I sucked at it. He was pretty good. He would get the
really?
good grades. I would get shit on in the family because I was shit at math.
Oh, there you go. So my dad is actually a lecturer at a university, and he's a professor in maths and science. And I hated it. I was failing it, and he was so embarrassed. And I just didn't have a reason to learn it. I didn't think it mattered. I couldn't see the connection between these problems that they kept sending us home with for homework. Yeah. This algebra or pi,
painful.
Like, what is the purpose of finding X in this triangle? Like, like it's like a mental puzzle for people who like Sudoku or something. Like, it's just like scratching this little itch in their brain, but I didn't have that itch. It was like literally somebody just with a whip going like, you have to learn it or I'm going to punish you. And the punishment is your parents are going to be disappointed and angry at you if you don't. So that was the only motivation to try to learn it, was so you don't get punished. But later on, obviously with Blender, I had to learn math because there are certain parts of Blender, like the shader. Like I had to do a series on shaders and how to understand, before the principled shader was in Blender, to make a PBR shader, you kind of had to build it and you had to understand Fresnel, what the index of refraction is, and all these technical mathematical things, and I had to learn, and it was suddenly very interesting. And same with like geometry nodes, it's all math-based now. And it's an interesting thing. Like, how do you make it so, how do you make a firework that has like an arc to it, right? So you have to do some math to do like gravity, right? That's this minus direction and this, and you know, that's an interesting thing. But I don't know how you get that in like a classroom setting, right?
Well, this is so interesting when you brought that mathematics example. The exact same thing happened in our household with physics. So Faraz hated physics, like he mentioned, like he hated math, and probably he didn't have good marks in physics.
I sucked at it.
When he started working on animation, he had to learn physics.
And I love it.
And then at one point he was calling our dad. He was like, Dad, look at here. Do you know this? Do you know lighting? Do you know how the light bounces? Do you know what is the velocity do here? Look at me now.
I was mocking my dad because he would make fun of me. Not make fun of me. He would scold me when I was getting shit grades in maths and I didn't understand. He would sit down with me. So he's really good at maths. He didn't have to teach Farah because Farah was good at it. And he would write down all the equations for me, the X and all that. And I just couldn't get it. And I didn't care. That was the problem. Exactly like you. I didn't give a shit. And then now I'm like an Unreal Engine, and now I'm working with physics, and then like you said, geometry notes on that. And I look at my dad, I'm like,
can you do this? Come and do this. If your math is so good, come and do it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I heard in the States recently, because I was over there for ThinkerCon, and I was just sort of learning, like apparently they have science. ThinkerCon. It's by Destin from Smarter Every Day. The YouTube channel.
Smarter Every Day. I know Smarter Every Day. What do they do?
Yeah. So it's not a public convention. I think the first one was. Now it's just like he just gets a group of 100 YouTubers that he are in the education space, and they just kind of anyway. Okay. But I was learning that they have like science fairs, and where they're basically, you have to think of a problem or think of something you want to test, like a hypothesis, and then test that thing. And I was like, that's a really, like, that would have piqued my curiosity, because you could get creative about that aspect. And it's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of at that point. The other thing I learned that America does, which I thought was great, is box car derbies, like pine car derbies. Have you heard of those?
No.
So it's like, we did it at ThinkerCon. And I was like, what the hell is this? Apparently it's something like a lot of Americans do. But it's like this little, you get like a piece of wood and you put 4 wheels on it, and it has to go down a track. Okay. And there are 4 tracks. So 4 of these little cars are going to race each other. So how do you win the race? Okay. There's no motor on it. All you've got is gravity as it goes down. And so Mark Rober has a video explaining how to make the ultimate pine car. But you have to learn about physics. You have to learn about inertia. You have to learn about friction in the wheels. You have to learn about like downdraft, right? So you have to like mold this pine car to stick to the track, to have low friction, to put the weight behind the wheels so that you get an extra push as it goes down the track. It's really interesting. And that would have really fascinated me. That would have piqued my curiosity, I think. I think having stuff like that, I don't know. I'm not a teacher at school. I don't want to criticize them too much, because I definitely could see it being a really challenging thing to do. But that, to me, for me personally, would have been a better way to learn.
But you have 2 kids now, and I think for their education, would you be taking them, oh, come and watch this YouTube video, I'm going to work with you because I don't think what they teach you is going to work out, because they need to also learn, and you know how tough it was for you, so you don't want it to be tough for them. What is your plan? Are they going to be YouTube educated as well, or?
I think they definitely are, like, in terms of, I think most kids are probably going to be learning from YouTube. I think education is definitely going to change a lot. For one, I've heard like VR, the applications of VR, that's one of the biggest opportunities, because education is so hampered by just the limitation of like, you can't get a bunch of kids to go to this place and learn about this firsthand. But you could, if it was VR, you could just load up a new map, a new level or whatever, and then you learn about physics with a ball, and you have to throw the ball into the thing. And, you know, so it's a much more hands-on application. I think that could be really interesting. There's also obviously ChatGPT, which is like just like a year old, but it's already basically replicating a tutor. Have you guys used it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, I was just using it. They got the talk feature now. You can like talk to it and it'll talk back to you.
How is that?
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's just on the phone. So you just like hit the little like talk button, and then you've just got, it's literally like talking to like Jarvis. Like, it's incredible. Wow. You just have a conversation with the smartest person in the world. It's so cool. So I was just
what
asking
Siri wanted to be, I imagine, right, in the first place.
Yeah, like just never was. Yeah. It's really cool. But I was like, I was just like driving home, and I was like, why is it that there's like the visible wavelength is here, and then you've got like the low frequency, and then like long waves and short waves, and this is visible. So why is that light that can pass through like a car, right? Like, how can you get a Wi-Fi signal in your car, or like a radio in your car, or through metal, or through a wall, but light doesn't go through a wall? So how is it, if it's light, how is it able to go through walls? And so I was just asking it, and then it would tell me an answer, and then I'm like, wait, so is it like this? And then it's like, not quite, it's more like this. And I'm like, okay, so this is like this, like this. Is that right? And he's like, yeah, that's basically right. It's this, this, and this. And it's just a conversation. And I learned a concept whilst driving home in my car. So
we should definitely give it a try. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And there's also now you can customize GPT. I think it came out the other day. I don't know what it's called, but it's like custom GPT thing. Someone sent me one on Twitter.
Isn't it called Agents?
Something agent, yeah. I haven't used it, but you can essentially train your own GPT assistant. Someone sent me one today that was the Blender Guru GPT. So it was trained on my videos, I think. I don't know, but then you could ask it questions and then I would reply. I don't know. I didn't play with it much.
Was it your voice as well that was cloned?
Oh, no. It's just like text response.
Okay. Because that's also possible, by the
way. I posted one the other day as well, but what's it called?
Heyman. Heygen.
The one that translates to different languages.
Yeah.
Freaking crazy.
Wild.
And you're talking in Portuguese and Indian and Chinese.
Yeah. I mean, he sent me one and I was like, what the hell is it? And it was me in the video. My mouth was moving and I was talking Japanese. And I was like, what the? Like, it's really... Yeah,
I have a question
really
for you.
crazy.
I remember that post you had on X. It's weird. I want to say tweet, but it's not tweet anymore, I guess. That post you had, you actually asked people if it sounded legit. What was people's response under that?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually my sister is dating. She lives in Japan. She's dating a Japanese guy. So I sent it to him. I'm like, "What? How does this sound?" And he was like, "Holy shit!" He said like some of the sentences are a little weird. Like it's not perfect. But the pauses, the intonations, the everything sounds freakishly good. But
oh my God,
it's not perfect. But I mean, hey, it's a hell
just
of a long
started,
way.
right? In a year time, I think it will be perfect.
Yeah,
I imagine
definitely.
YouTube can take that and put it in their platform in a way that, for example, if Blender Guru is doing a tutorial,
Donut series
in French, in Indian, in Portuguese, in Spanish.
And guess what? On top of that, you could have your AI chat bot trained on your videos on YouTube, so it's your own, and then it's trained based on the exact videos you put out. And at the side, you finish a tutorial, and I'm like, actually, Andrew missed out this one point. Andrew, what does this button do? And then it will tell you in your voice, because it's been trained on all your videos. Maybe you covered it in another video.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that far, I would say. But
Not that far.
I know that because you have such a huge platform, you also get comments that are negative about AI and comments that people are concerned. I understand. And we see all those comments. And it's natural. Anything in the world has the positive side and the negative side, right? AI is going to have that too. There's going to be good things and there's going to be bad things. And you're not to blame. We're not to blame. It is just happening. And we have one choice. We either use it or we don't. But the only concern I had when I was talking to Farhad, I understand there's the copyrights issues. There's so many more. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we're all competing in a world where people are fighting for survival, right? At the very core of it, right? We might be civilized, but we're all trying to win in life by achieving our dreams. And if the entire world and the competition, if you will, starts using all of these AI platforms, it's going to be very hard for those people who are against AI to not use it at all. It's like saying, I am not going to use the internet, right? 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But you can't do that right now. I mean, you can, but then you'll be
out of business. Yeah, you'll be out of business.
There you go. So what are your thoughts with AI? How do you approach it, considering that you have a huge platform and people look up to you? How do you deal with that whole situation, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, it's very heated. I had a feeling we were going to talk about it on this podcast. I'm like, oh boy. Which actually, like just last week, like I woke up in the morning and I was getting like DMs from people going like, sorry, you're getting canceled. And I was like, I'm getting canceled? So I'd made a tweet where I tweeted out, I tried out Luma AI. Had
the Genie.
Genie, that's right. And it was text to 3D. Yeah. And I literally like picked it up 5 minutes, typed in some prompts. I was like, interesting. This is kind of where 3D generation is. I tweeted like some pictures. This is a couch. I did like the Family Guy couch. I'm like, purple couch. And I showed that, and I was like, all right, it's like a really like decimated mesh. It's like all, you know, whatever. And I'm like, it's kind of interesting. And then, damn it, like the quote retweets of people just ripping it to shreds. Most of it was about the fact that the mesh was like way too high poly. It was just, and obviously, like it's too high poly, but like that's not the point. Like there's such a thing as retopo. You guys should know that. But like photo scans, people use those in the game dev space. It's not, you know. Anyway, most of it was against that, but there was also like a very real, a feeling that it was going to take people's jobs, and therefore, how could you promote that, right? And much the same way you guys are saying, I don't think you're going to be able to refuse this technology. If somebody uses it and they're 10x more productive than somebody who isn't, well, it's not going to take long for employers and for clients to go, you're way too expensive. Like, why are you charging this much and this guy's charging this much for the same result? So I don't think we'll have a choice. But I also know there's a lot of emotions in it. It's a very fearful space. People literally feel like they're fighting for their life. Like this is their job, their livelihood. They've built their whole career on it. And overnight, it seems like it's just going to be taken away. The thing is, I want to make a video on it to carefully explain it. I'm going to like mess it up now, but this is the gist. Like, I don't think it's true. Okay. I don't think that when you make something easier and a process faster, that jobs are erased. On the flip side, it's actually usually the opposite. It's almost always a good thing, an expansion of a space when things get cheaper. So to put things like, okay, shaders used to have to be coded, right? You had to code your own shader. When the shader was literally a button in 3D software, did that kill a job? Well, yes, it did. But only if that was the only thing that person knew how to do, was to code a shader, right? But what the industry gained was it now made things way more cheaper and much more like, you want to build like a movie like Toy Story. It's going to cost this much and it can only be 82 minutes long and it's still going to be like way over budget and it can only have like a few objects in it because it costs so much money per object to write the shaders and every little thing like that. Well, it's like, well, now we've automated this chunk. So like now we can add more objects to the scene, right? And so you do that. And if you look at 3D software today, probably 98% of it, literally 98% of the software today is something that used to be someone's job, right? But obviously the 3D space has exploded. So how do we reconcile that, right? That by removing a skill set that somebody has learned and automating it has resulted in, because it's a cheaper cost, more industries coming to the space, more uses for it. Photography now for products, that's going away because it's so much cheaper and better to do it in 3D. A lot of things that used to be done in camera for movies are now going to 3D. A lot of companies now for like websites and like in-store visits, they're building virtual experiences because 3D is becoming more and more and more accessible and cheaper to use over and over and over again. So the space is expanding despite jobs disappearing. And it's because the job isn't disappearing, the skill set is disappearing. So I think in almost every case, when someone says this is going to kill jobs, if you replace jobs with skill or skill set, it would almost certainly be more true, right? Yes. The only time it would literally result in somebody being fired is if that's all the person was good for. That's the only thing they knew was, how to do what's it called? Not retopo, but like in After Effects, you trace around someone.
Rotoscoping.
Yeah, rotoscoping. Sorry, yeah. Yes. If that's all you know how to do, right? And then when your boss is like, hey, can you do this other thing? You're like, nah, I don't know how to do it. It's like, well, can you learn it? I got kids, man. I don't have time to learn it. I'm just going to do this. Well, it's like, okay. When After Effects releases its AI tool that does that, and they're going to take a team of 30 and they're going to reduce it to 3, one of those guys is going to be the one who didn't want to learn it, right? But also, I don't even think the 30 reduction down to 3, it almost never happens like that. Yeah. Almost never. And if it does, it's like those people get to do more things. Like they get to expand and like, okay, well, now we've got more of a budget to do this. We can do more output. We can increase our output with the same team, with the same budget. So we can do that and we can get a leg up on the competition. We can keep growing and expanding our abilities. Now, there's obviously, I think the DreamWorks CEO said recently that he thinks that in 3 years, you'll be able to create a animated movie with 10% of the workforce that we have today. And that was like headlines because it's like, holy shit, like the CEO wants to fire 90% of the animation studio.
He scared the shit out of everybody.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't even think he thinks that, because I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying to get the same result of a movie, if you want to create Puss in Boots in 3 years from now with the exact same script, the exact same runtime and length, then it would be. But of course, the cutting edge, if you want to create popular IP, you want to be competing at this new edge where you're creating things that are way better than everyone else, because then you can actually sell it and hit a wide audience, right? So the movies are just going to get really, really good. And they're going to be able to like iterate faster. They're going to have like finished looking results way earlier in the previews. And then they're going to be able to go, this story doesn't work. Let's fix it. Let's change it. right? And they're going to be using AI to write some of the story. They're going to be generating storyboards on the fly, right? And they're going to come out with a movie that's way, way better, way polished. And I think the team size will stay the same. I think it was a very poor choice of words, the way he said it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, I 100% agree with Andrew, because especially about the expansion part. If we look at the other industry, let's put AI 3D aside. When we had engine motors and airplanes, we expanded transportation. We didn't limit transportation. We could go to places that we could never go before. Of course, we are not going to use horses anymore, but now we can go to places faster, and that now we can go intercontinent.
Yes.
So the exact same thing applies here. The possibilities now with AI in the future, I mean, now we are at the very early stage, would be much bigger. The creation would be much greater. The quality would be much higher. What do you think?
It's just like going around. All right, let me give you guys my opinion.
No, so if anybody gets canceled, like you get canceled too, okay?
The whole podcast is canceled. I think you guys explained it perfectly. It's just, I'm going to be a little bit more harsh about this. And I'm saying this because at the end of the day, I'm a person as well. I learned 3D, and guess what? Most of it I learned from your Blender tutorials, right? And in my mind, when I first saw AI coming around, especially the very big hype cycle, which was, I guess, a couple of months ago when people were just freaking out about ChatGPT and all these AI tools, I freaked out for a moment. I was like, holy shit, I spent all those times watching the donut tutorial. Now, like, the modeling is going to get automated. The UV unwrapping is going to get automated. And in my mind, I was like, I hope the UV unwrapping does get automated. I hate that part. But no, the modeling part, that's the part I love. Like, why is that getting automated? Yeah. I got scared, but what did I do about it? I stopped thinking about that, and I started working on my other skill sets. I went to Unreal Engine, started learning that, started learning more about rendering, lighting, fundamentals. The only way you can fight this, even if you're scared, is to just keep learning, just to keep improving yourself, because that way, even if there's an AI, you just have so many things that you know that for an AI to compete with you, it's going to be difficult. So go ahead and fight the AI. I'd like the Terminator shit. I really think that you can eventually do that. But there's one thing to consider. Elon Musk, was it? That said on the podcast that eventually it's going to get potentially to a point where AI is going to be capable of doing anything you want. So everybody's going to have an AI robot or chatbot that will do anything you want for you. So at that point, it's just a matter of, can you find meaning in your work? Can you find meaning in your life and do what you truly want to do? Because if you have an assistant that can create anything for you, then what are you going to create? What are the ideas you have? And that becomes a competition of drive and ideas, right? There's so many directors in the world, but it's the ones that actually have the drive to go to work every day and want to create the best movies. Those guys, they will have the same AI access than someone sitting at home that has the same ideas. But the difference is that director wants to go out there and has the drive. So I think it really comes down to how much fire you have. It goes back to the very beginning of our story, of your story, where you said you were coming back home and you spend hours, learning Blender. If you have that in you, I really don't think you should be afraid of AI, because whatever happens, you're still in competition with every other human being. You're going to be using it to your advantage. And I think that's going to be the best thing. I don't know about the copyrights part. I generally cannot comment on that because there's companies who are violating the rules. And then there's companies like Adobe who I believe in their terms and conditions.
They said they're using only their own resource materials to basically generate those images for Firefly.
Yeah, I guess that's something that we'll find out the more we'll see all these AI tools come around. I generally don't. I can't comment on that. I don't know how all these companies. I don't even
feel like it matters. I mean, it's like people go like, "How can you like?" That's the bit that But it's like there's two outcomes. Like, okay, either they just go, it doesn't matter because it's not actually copyright infringing. It's transforming it in a way that the copyright law says is okay, and we just continue with that, or we do ban it. And anything that's trained on a copyright material can't be used. And then you just have more effort put into ethical AI models, like what Adobe is doing. And there are some other language learning models which are using ethically sourced material. And then those will be there in like maybe a year. So you've given yourself maybe a year time. But either way, you're going to end up in a point where you have to face the question, what am I going to do about AI? So that's why I don't really... I mean, I don't know. People get really upset when I say it, but like, I don't think it's the right question to be asking right now. That's all.
I 100% agree.
But something that I think people don't actually talk about enough, but it's like, it's a huge opportunity also. Like, like if you think about, okay, if DreamWorks is saying they can be able to create like a feature film with 10% of the workforce, like like you as a creator, what can you do with that? Right? Like, why imagine if every single person that got into games and was a modeler, right, going through a cog in the wheel, what if they actually got to do what they wanted to do, which was actually to make a game, their own idea with their own vision? What if every filmmaker that joined ILM or whatever, doing retopo for just another pipeline, what if they got to make a feature film or a short film at the level of quality that ILM is producing today, and they got to do it with themselves and maybe one or two other people? You would have thousands of incredible quality films, right? You're basically democratizing it. So it's something that like we talk about like, oh, these big tech companies, they're coming here and they're coming to take our jobs. It's like, are you fighting on behalf of the studio so they can be the only ones who can afford to create a feature film? Like it should also, I mean, we should talk about it. It should be a celebration for the little guy. Because like if we're talking about, hey, you're going to be able to do all this stuff with a fraction of the cost, that means you can do this. You can make a feature. That's incredible. That's going to be and like think about like what most of us, like how did we get into 3D or VFX? You got inspired when you saw Jurassic Park, when the T-Rex busts through the thing and you go, holy shit, I want to make that. I want to make that. And then the actual reality was you end up burnt out in a studio doing mundane shit, right?
Yeah.
You wanted to do that and you got this, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing if you got to do that just for you?
Yes.
That would be incredible.
100%. I think
it's exciting.
Sorry.
It's scary. It's exciting.
Dude, that's the best point because it is the tool that is going to give you the capability to do that. And the more these tools get advanced, the more chance you have at creating what you dreamed of in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Very well said.
And it's not about only entertainment or 3D industry, any industry. How many ideas, how many products have been killed because not enough resources, not enough finances, or how can I get a team of 10 to make this happen? A lot of people, you talk to them, they have this problem. Oh, if I want to do this, I need a team of 10. Now you don't. Now you can actually tell yourself, the idea that I had, my dream, my childhood dream, now can become true. Not only in film, it can be music, it can be, I don't know, engineering, medicine, anything, even research space. So now you have so much potential to go in and make it happen. I think people need to just keep learning. I think that's the only thing that you can do in this space. Yeah. Keep learning, and then go for the things that you love. And I think you can make it happen with AI.
And it's funny. I know that there's mixed reactions. Even when I look into the Hollywood space, we have different people in the space on our Instagram account, and there's some that hate AI and there's some that love it. They're just using AI every day. I think people are just going to constantly have this mixed emotion towards AI, but it comes to a point where everyone's going to automatically use it. I mean, technically, we all use it today with
using Photoshop.
Yeah. Photoshop. Yeah, we all use it. It's just going to, in a very subtle manner, it's just going to get into everybody's lives without people even noticing until you realize, oh shit, I've been using it and I actually like it because it helps me in this and this and this. And there's going to be parts that we're not going to like about it. But I appreciate your answer, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of people might not have the right idea, but at least you explain it very clearly. I want to quickly just take this back to education.
Yeah.
We were talking about what the education system should do in order to change so that more people can get excited. I actually had this idea with Farhad, and I think looking at the trajectory of where the world is going, I believe college, high school should have coding classes. They should have 3D classes too. I mean, technically speaking, 3D is now being majorly used in different industries, right? You're talking about factories, NVIDIA. You're talking about Tesla, they use it. You're talking about, music videos, films. Almost every business can use 3D and can use coding in a way. So I believe if these are the absolute essential skill sets that are actually paid in high amounts as well when you have a good job, These should be taught at a very early age. They shouldn't be just maths and sciences and arts until university. They should bring all of these classes earlier on, and I think that can potentially change the way the education system work. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like Blender classes.
I mean, I would say yes, but I'm also like, I'm biased towards it. We are biased towards 3D because we use it, we love it, we can see its applications. But I'm sure if you spoke to somebody in cooking, they'd say the same, Like, how is it that we all eat food every single day and none of us know how to make it? It's like it should be a fundamental.
That's a great point.
Or how about a mechanic? We all drive a car every day. How can we not know how to fix our own car? I think if you asked every profession, they'd be like, well, my profession should definitely be in school,
That's okay. Shit. You got me there. All right.
Maybe.
We need to figure that out then. It's weird.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you because sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
No, the thing I wanted to ask you, because the name that you carry is Blender Guru, but I want to know do you use other 3D softwares? Have you used Unreal, Unity, Cinema, or you are so
I
religious?
used Unity a little. I made I think I followed Bracky's tutorial to make a simple little game.
Okay.
I did that. I picked up Unreal for a little bit early on to try to experiment with it.
And what did you think about Unreal?
What's that, sorry?
What did you think about Unreal?
I mean, it's incredible. Like, that's what you throw a lot of money at a piece of software, you can do cool stuff with it. It's definitely like one of the few companies that's pushing I think it's Epic, Side Effects to an extent. These are companies that are like actually innovating. Adobe. I think people like really slept on Adobe. Like when they acquired Substance, they're like, well, that's it. Substance is dead, and then they're innovating. They're like coming up with like a modeler that you use with VR goggles. Like, whereas the other companies are just like, no, it's all about the mouse and keyboard, they're trying new things and it's very cool. And I think Blender as well. A lot of innovation there, but Autodesk, they've kind of dropped the ball. From what I've seen there.
We use Unreal Engine a lot, and we basically I would say our pipeline is pretty much Unreal Engine, Blender, and Substance Painter, these three softwares.
Oh, yeah.
What is your thoughts about Unreal Engine in terms of yourself getting into it? I mean, you tried it out. The reason I'm asking is because we all know, I mean, Blender is great, and it's used for different purposes for bad decisions. But for yourself, have you ever considered actually checking it out and even potentially making tutorials about it?
Are you pushing Andrew to use Unreal?
Pushing my agenda. No, because I know you love setting up scenes and seeing how the light reacts with the material and how good it looks. And Unreal Engine's all about that, right? Because you can build everything in Blender and then sometimes bring it to Unreal Engine and do really crazy things.
You're definitely pushing it.
I know I am. A little biased. But I want to know if that has never made you enticed to be like, I'm going to spend a little bit more time.
I do. I mean, to be honest, like it's incredible. Like, especially the nanite. That's really cool. Just being able to not care about, mesh.
Geometry,
geometry, density. That's amazing. I do want to get heavily into it at some point. I mean, in a way, though, it's like I see the offline renderers, right, and the real-time renderers. They are converging, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So Unreal has put a path tracer, so you can do offline rendering in your scene, but it's built for real-time. So they're going this way. And then Blender is building EV, and they're coming out with EV Next in 4.1, which is a lot closer to Unreal Engine. It's like real-time, actual real-time, which is what it should have been. And it's going this way. And so I don't know I don't know what the huge advantage, I mean, obviously the big advantage to Unreal is you could actually play it at the end with controls and interact. I'd love to be able to do that. Just make I've got this idea of I want to make like a snow scene with like a cabin, and then you can walk into the cabin, open a door, and there's like an interior scene, and just be like just a fun little experiment. Like a snowstorm outside, and then you walk in and it's cozy and warm. And I'm like, that would be a fun project. But haven't got the time.
No, you did the cabin in the woods video where you created that whole scene in Blender. Am I right?
Yeah.
That was a while ago. So you're imagining something like that, but in a snowy scene. It's a little cozy.
Yeah, something like exactly. Yeah.
I think that would be a great idea. No, I think the Unreal Engine thing, like you mentioned, the renders are getting closer to each other, and eventually they're going to converge and merge, and it's going to be very, very similar. Eevee Next is something we've seen videos of. I saw a post of someone rendering at 0.2 seconds a frame or something on X. Have you tested Eevee Next? Have you had access to it?
I just tested it yesterday, like really basic. I haven't really played with it that much, but it does look pretty good. Yeah. But I don't know much. Yeah, the performance.
The graphics of it, the lighting and all has also been updated, or is it just speed?
It's a good question. As far as I know, it's mostly speed. But I think it's also. Oh wait, no, yeah, okay. So it definitely the look, because I noticed straight away like the difference between Eevee and Eevee Next. I just had like a cube on a plane with a lamp source, the simplest thing, and the shadows were actually like touching the ground. Right. They didn't have that light bleed underneath it, where it's like a fakery kind of thing. So it was like proper crisp shadows, and then also it had bounce lighting. So it's got kind of like lumen capabilities.
Yes.
But inside of Eevee, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Haven't really tested much more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be really promising. And I think that at that point, it's going to be harder to convince Andrew to come to Unreal Engine.
But as long as you can play it, and like if you could put on VR goggles and go inside it and like do stuff, I think that's where Unreal Engine kind of stands out. A shared experience that other people can enjoy. I think Unreal is still going to be king for that.
And it's more of also metahumans for us, because we wanted to create digital avatars. And there's, ways you can do that in Blender, but metahumans and the Live Link platform, and now MetaHuman Animator, because you get all of that realistic facial animation. So if you're into creating digital avatars, which we were for our cinematics, that's where it was just like, oh my God, we have to get into Unreal. But I totally get your point. If that's not what you're creating, then Blender, especially with Eevee Next, is just going to be really, really sick for you. And by the way, creating in Blender is really fast. Like if you want to create something really quickly, Blender is still much faster to open up and get into a scene. So
how's Unreal with modeling? Like I heard they've improved it relatively recently. It's getting better?
Yes. It's getting much better. So the tools that they have, they just updated the panel. Plus, they just released or announced Project Avalanche, which is for MoGraph artists. So people like Jonathan Winbush, who've been using Cinema 4D for motion graphics, can now use the similar tools with effectors and cloners within Unreal Engine 5. So the reason why they created this is because of all the live shows that Unreal Engine runs using basically, I think Rocket League and all these different games use Project Avalanche. No, they haven't, or have they?
They haven't. I think maybe they are in the beta test.
Probably testing it out.
But they are releasing it to everybody now, I think Q1 next year.
Yeah, so you can imagine when these different team graphics come around, they had to create them in Cinema 4D and then bring them to Unreal, animate them a little bit, but now the modeling tools are becoming so good. They're adding all these really sick effects. Basically, they're bringing Photoshop into Unreal Engine. So you have all these layers on the left panel now in Project Avalanche, where you get to bring in different layers on top of each other. So it's 2D and 3D. And then you have all the powers of Unreal Engine and lighting and still nanites working. So it is really crazy what they're doing.
That's
there.
really interesting. Yeah. So they're going, I mean, in a way, like, how did they do that live previously? Like, how did television put titles and stuff? Were they using After Effects?
No.
I don't think so.
What do you mean? What do you mean previous? You mean prior to Unreal or no, with Unreal?
No. Yeah. So, what are they currently like? So, what is television like the NFL using currently if they air a game and they have like a player's name? Because I'm actually just I googled Project Avalanche.
So that's a good question. No, they use Unreal. They do use Unreal, but what they would not, I don't know about the NFL, but I know a lot of video game tournaments used Unreal Engine. I've been to some of them that they use Unreal Engine. So what they do is they either do the animations in Blender or Cinema 4D or Maya, and then they bring them into Unreal. Then they do a couple of different things there. And they use Unreal as a real-time engine that is running the thing.
At the end.
Or even Tomorrowland, which is our most favorite music festival, uses Unreal Engine to power the entire LED and production of the show. So they would bring all the assets from other 3D softwares to Unreal to display it in real time so they can make changes if they need to. But now you'll have Project Avalanche, which allows you to just create it within. And that's why they're also working on the modeling tool. So if you're trying to create a sphere or a cube, deform it a little bit, subdivide it, change it, flip the normals, all these things are there. It was just not very easy to use. So they're updating all of this. Plus the layer effect and all that. It's just going to make it so much easier for you to not have to leave Unreal to create something cool.
Yeah, I had not heard about that. That's very interesting. So Unreal is already used in live television in a big way.
Yeah. You got to give a shout out to Prismax.
Joris.
They're Belgium, right?
They're a Belgium-based company. They are using Unreal for live shows, live events, broadcasting news. They're using Unreal for everything. Yeah. We had him on the podcast. He was explaining how he handles multiple stages in a music festival. Then on a news broadcast show, how do they change the background of the anchorman? So many use cases there.
The reason why I guess we are pushing Unreal Engine on our channel and why we talk about it, aside from the fact that we love the software, is because a lot of the people we speak to from different industries, they constantly, when we ask them the same question, people ask us in the comments on how can they find jobs as an artist. It looks like there's a lot of need and demand for Unreal Engine technical artists. So people who can use the engine for different events, purposes, live shows. And that's a demand that a lot of people are not aware of. So that's why I believe Unreal Engine themselves is also creating all these different platforms. And you know what's funny? I don't know if you know this, but very much like AI, the moment you make something, you're going to have people who are mad at it too. So they released such an amazing tool. I mean, they're about to. And then I saw in the comments, they're like, that's the death of Unreal Engine. You guys are focusing on too many things at the same time. This is going to kill the software. It's not going to be the same anymore. Yeah. Dude, this is such a revolutionary piece.
The moment you are creating content, I think there will be negative comments. Like, it's impossible to go all positive. No, even if you are creating something, if you are teaching, there will be negative comments at all time.
Yeah, definitely.
I've seen those comments before with Blender.
Right I'm watching an Avalanche video. I did not know that Unreal Engine was used in live television. I mean, I'd seen that like years ago. That first, like someone did like a weather live broadcast, and they had like weather events in the news studio, and it was kind of like an interesting use case for like real-time 3D in live broadcasting. But I didn't really know it was much more beyond like a prototype. It's very cool.
Man. It's
I will definitely have to check it out. I mean, that's the use cases for that is incredible. I mean, it makes sense that things started 2D because computers, the hardware wasn't there. 3D is obviously superior, so like you would get away from the 2D tools eventually. And Unreal is really pulling into it. I know they announced they changed their pricing recently. What was that about?
Yeah. Come on, man. Why did we have to discuss those stuff here? So Unity got a lot of fire, right? You remember that?
I don't know why they just announced it after Unity. Couldn't they wait for 6 months?
Tim Sweeney doesn't care.
Yeah, actually, true that. They asked him on Twitter, and he clarified on X that this pricing model is only for certain studios that are making certain amount of money and above. It doesn't impact the experiments, education, because to be honest, there's a lot of movie studios using it for virtual production, making $1 million movie and then not paying a penny.
Cars, BMW, all these different car brands, Rivian, they're using Unreal Engine for their showrooms, for
in their car, in their
car itself, and they're not paying anything. So they're planning to charge people like that, not students, not people trying to learn and just getting started. So
frankly, I thought they already were paying for it. I didn't know that film and TV were able to use Unreal for free.
It was free. Only game devs had to pay more than $1 million.
If you made more than $1 million, then you had to pay. So the only pricing model on the website, I think still is there because the new pricing model is not out, is if you don't make $1 million, we don't care. If you make above $1 million, then we have to talk to each other and come up with some agreement.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy. And it's funny because at the same time they did a layoff series, which people were kind of scared by. Yeah, but at the same time, Tim Sweeney, what I loved about him, he was so genuine. He started the entire presentation of Unreal Fest with addressing the layoff. So he didn't hide it. He didn't sugarcoat it. He just said, we didn't do any during COVID. And we need to generate revenue, which is why they're also doing UEFN, which is allowing creators to create Fortnite maps so that it becomes a creator economy. And at the same time,
they also want to compete with Roblox too, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yes.
Makes sense.
That's the only one paying now for other departments. So if you look at like MetaHumans, experimental, other feature, all experimental. The money for all these different features that Unreal develops comes from Fortnite.
Yeah.
So he was saying that we cannot sustain this model that Fortnite makes all the money, other departments take the money for R&D, but no one who's paying for other services, pay for that. So the whole conversation was around vehicle industry, real estate, entertainment. So they have to start paying, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I think every company is doing it now, charging more.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know if you guys seen it in the last like 6 months. It's just like you get an email like every day, like, hey,
we have
customer, we love you, but we're raising the price by a few bucks. Yeah.
Yes. It's happening a lot, except Blender, of course. Blender's still free. Yep. How does that, I mean, you went to all the Blender conferences.
I saw his photo from 2009 and then 2022.
Yes.
You posted a photo on Instagram that you were on BlenderCon in 2009, I think was the first one, and then 2022. Yep. You must have seen radical changes and shifts during
the biggest was by far COVID. It just, like I could see my viewership. You could see as soon as the lockdowns happened, it's like this spike, whoop. Ooh. Just everybody started learning Blender. It was also
we were guilty. Yeah, we were guilty of that.
Actually, at the last conference, there were people who were not 3D artists previously. They started learning 3D in COVID, and they're already now employed at a studio. And they, just like in like 3 years, it's really crazy that people can get a job that quickly. But yeah, like that was because 2.8 came out in like October of 2019. So it was like a few months, and 2.8 was the huge release. That was the pivotal one. A lot of people don't think it was, but it went from like Blender being this arcane, weird little software that did everything different, right click to select, and all the like just weird stuff that made no conventional sense, to like, okay, let's be conventional. And it was actually a guy, Bill, who just focused on the UI for years and just got through all of these massive changes. William Reynolds, his last name, trying to remember the name. Yep. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think Blender would be anywhere near as popular as it is, honestly. Like,
shout out.
There's no way, like, because I'd done a donut tutorial previous to that. There was nowhere near the number of people watching it then. Right. So the first donut series, it was popular in relation to my previous stuff, but it was still like a fraction. It was the fact that Blender was accessible. You could actually get somewhere much quicker because you had conventions from other software that you could use in Blender. And that was just like a tipping point. It's really, that's when Blender took off. It's only been like 3 years.
It's funny you bring that up. I mean, I never used Blender, the archaic version. And I remember I vouched for Blender having one of the best UIs in the world in different softwares because of how universal the different buttons are, where you're scaling something or rotating something. Even when you go to the node section, it still works the same way.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because it was like the first software that did it. I'm like, that's so cool. And even when I was in Cinema 4D and I had the render on one side, and then my model on this side, I was like, I want to work on the actual rendered output. And I saw you guys doing that in Blender. I was like, fuck, I wish I started with Blender.
Yeah,
that was one of the reasons I switched as well. So that shift, like you mentioned, that happened at 2.8? Like all those big moves? Okay.
Yep, that's right.
And
Blender did some weird stuff. Some of it was good early on, like like keyboards really heavily into shortcuts. That was... It was great if you knew the shortcuts early on, but there was no, like, if you didn't know what the hotkey was for proportional editing, There was no button in your interface that told you to turn it on or off. So you had to know, what is the hotkey for that? What is the hotkey for snapping? I don't know how to snap. What is the hotkey for this? So it was just like, you had to like almost learn piano on your keyboard, right? And so it was a super fucking steep learning curve. It was just, it was like vertical. You had to learn so much to do the basic stuff that it was just too much. People just hit a wall and went, nah, I'm out, you know? But the hotkeys are still there in Blender, but there's now buttons all around it. So you don't have to know G to grab and move something. You can just look, oh, there's a button over there that's the move tool. And oh, if I highlight it, it says G, you know? So like you can learn the hotkey in the interface, or you can just click it. So yeah, so it had weird stuff. It also had like non-modal. Like Blender was really early on, like doesn't have windows that pop up all the time. Like you change a setting and then a window would pop up, right? Like, you know, other software does that. Blender for always has just been flat. Ton's vision was like, it's going to be, I think it's called non-modal interface. And that was kind of a big, like people were like, why is Blender, like you can't have a window with extra settings. It all has to be flush. But over the years, every software has switched to that interface. Not saying they copied Blender, but it was just a smart idea. So there's hotkey base, non-modal. That was definitely good. But all the others, right-click select, was so dumb. Like, you know, Blender didn't have an undo function.
What?
When I started, Blender did not have an undo function, and people fought against it when it was added.
Why?
You could not undo. I'm not kidding you. So if you made a mistake, you hit a button by mistake, you couldn't undo. That was it. It blows your mind to think about it. Blender did not have an undo function. Yeah.
So you're telling me you were halfway through the donut and then you fucked up the donut and then you had to go start
create a new donut.
So actually you just got very good at saving incremental files. I hate that. Every 5 minutes. Because it was like operating a game without like
Blender Donut Safety 2
version 11.1 final. I swear this is the final file. Wow.
Yeah. So like, I mean, that's what I mean. Like it came from this really arcane, nerdy place that didn't make sense, but it was a very long process to get it, I think, accessible to what it is today. Yeah.
I'm glad it did, because it's changed so many people's lives. Andrew, what is in the future for Blender Guru? We've seen how much you've grown over the years and what you've done. We know that from a recent video you put out that you'll be putting a pause on the podcast because you want to focus more on the channel. So I guess for people to understand, what's your goals, what's your plan, what's the vision, what would it be?
Yeah. So a couple of big things. So I'm moving to LA in February.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why are you making that choice? If you don't mind me asking, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to do it for years. COVID kind of put a stop to it when I was like, hey, maybe I should do it. And then COVID happened and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not able to leave the country anyway. Australia's locked its borders. So I'm moving to LA because every time I go there, I go to SIGGRAPH or something. I like meet up with people. I have a quick coffee with someone and I come away with like 3 pages of ideas, of notes. And then they transform the company, Poliigon or Blender Guru, for the next year, right? So that one trip where I have coffees with 6 different people fuels the rest of the year, right? So what if I lived there? How much different would the company be, right? So it makes total sense. Even though LA is going to be, I think I have to pay myself a salary, an extra $50,000 a year or something, just to, just for the cost of living, the rent, the everything. Like, I mean, it's great I'm able to do that, but it's I can totally understand why people are slumming it there because it's a high cost of living. So that and that's, oh, by the way, that's assuming I get a visa, assuming the U.S. consulate approves my visa.
Have you applied already? Because progress is so damn slow, man. The immigration in North America.
Apparently not. Like I'm doing it through an agent, and he's like, once you get all the paperwork, once you've done the interview, it's like 2 weeks.
It's that's dependent on where you're applying from.
Okay,
so
probably
maybe from Australia. Yeah, it's okay.
I think the sponsored visa through a company I've heard, like Google is like complaining they can't actually get workers into the country fast enough because it's so slow. But anyways, so I'm doing that. The second thing is, so I'm making another course the first time in about maybe 5-10 years. And it's a beginner course. So it's going to be called Blender for Beginners. Haven't announced it before. So, hey, there you go.
The first time, wow.
There you go.
There you go, guys. Fresh
It's an
right
exclusive.
here. When it's going to come out? Do you have any plans or
Yeah,
timeline
so
for
I'm
it?
going to announce it, officially in the donut tutorial. So the aim is the donut's always going to be free. But essentially, I keep getting emails from people saying, what do I do next? What, can you, they literally say, can you sell me a course? And I'm like, well, I don't have one. And they're like, I'll pay for it. I'm like, I don't have one.
I don't. Please take my money.
Yeah. And I recommend a YouTube video. The problem with YouTube, it's a great idea. It's revolutionized education. I love it for what it is, but it's an advertising model, which means it incentivizes short-term, bite-sized pieces of video, because obviously there's going to be more people who have spare 5-minute chunks of their day to watch something quick than people who can invest a huge chunk of time watching 20-part series on modeling, right?
Right.
So if you make that 20-part series of modeling, it could be the most valuable course in the world. It's just, there's such a small fraction of people that have the time for it. Even though they really love it, the fact that it's free, it just doesn't pay for it. There's just no way to make it financially viable. So that's what courses are for. So I'm going to make the beginner one always free. And then for people who want that something extra, making the course Blender for Beginners. And it's going to teach you basically just continue on the journey, more advanced features. So what do you do after you finish the donut? Well, let's make a donut cafe. Or I haven't actually got the exact modules, but basically lots of modeling probably, then a real-time asset, so making a lantern, and then probably trying to export it to Unreal Engine. I haven't done it yet, but I want to be able to get it in there because I think people want that. And then rigging and animation. I want to do a little character walk cycle thing. And then, so that's the plan with that. So that'll be on blenderguru.com.
Wow, you'll be super busy in the next couple of months, moving to LA, doing a new course.
How long does it take for you to do courses like this? Do you imagine?
I mean, it could be how long is a piece of string? It could be as long or as short as you want. The trouble is, I found the effort to sell something is the same, whether it's a big something or a small something. So originally I was like, I'll just make a short little thing. It's going to be, one little piece of tutorial and you pay for it. But it's the build up, you got to build a newsletter list. You got to have a sales page. You got to put Kajabi onto it to host your videos. You got to sell it. You got to mention it in all your upcoming videos that it's coming out. You have to do all the same amount of work except for the core bit. So just make it a bigger product that does and fills more needs. And then it's a way better idea. So I'm just going to make it a much bigger course than I would have originally thought, but is hopefully more valuable. Yeah.
100%.
You know what's funny? We're going all the way back to the very beginning of the podcast. The guy who was not getting good grades is now considering what the next modules of his education platform should be.
I know. It's crazy. I know.
It's crazy. And we know that our time is almost up. So I just want to, Farah, do you have any questions?
No, I just want to thank Andrew for his time. He opened up about so many things, his journey, his thoughts on AI, the education, the things that, we've done our fair bit of research about you in the past few days because we wanted to have this podcast. But the way you opened up and talk about stuff, I think it was really, really amazing for me and inspiring. I think it is for our audience too at the same time.
Yeah. And I also wanted to take a moment to say thank you personally. And also on behalf of, I guess, people who are listening and watching who can't really say this to you now, but probably can comment it, because it was during COVID when I first discovered your donut tutorials. And at the time, I was feeling lost. I had no idea what I want to do. I was in gaming. I was in esports. And I knew I wanted to do something with 3Ds. I was already in Cinema 4D. And I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do.
You were a gamer?
Yes.
Actually play the game, not making the game.
No, not making the game. I was actually hosting different tournaments, which is why I told you I knew about Unreal Engine in tournaments. So I was doing the production side. I was not doing anything 3D related. I was hosting the tournaments like an MC on stage, and also the shows.
Really? Oh, I didn't know this. Okay, that's crazy.
It was for League of Legends,
PUBG.
it was Dota, PUBG, all these different games that had tournaments in Asia. We used to live in Malaysia at the time. And I was doing different hosting for these shows. And I was interested in video games in 3D. Didn't know I'm going to get into it until we knew we wanted to go to Canada at the time. And so I was like, okay, I got to do something else. I can't just do my job here and then transfer it over there. So 3D was a skill I wanted to learn. And I was starting Cinema 4D with that tutor that I don't want to name, but I wasn't truly learning it. I wasn't excited. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to try to learn it. And then I found your tutorials, and it changed the trajectory of what I wanted to do. And honestly, one of the reasons why Bad Decisions Studio is here is because we learned Blender through your tutorials, and that guided us to more tutorials, more resources, and now doing a lot of Unreal Engine. But the source of it, I would say, was because of how easy you made that entire journey. And I want to say thank you because at the time, if it was hard, I probably would have given up and not done it.
Probably there wouldn't be any bad decision.
Probably wouldn't. This podcast would probably not be there, and Bad Decisions would be a completely different company and different story. So, on behalf of myself and everybody as well who followed your tutorials, I want to say thank you, and I hope you keep doing them because you never know at which point, people will watch it and it will change their lives. I'm sure a lot of people comment and tell you, but I don't
think it would be enough, the number of comments that you get, because I think only 50% of the people. Have you ever commented? Actually,
I did. Not on every part, because I'm like busy in the donut.
The magnitude of impact, I think you only sense probably 50% of it. You would never hear.
No, maybe 10%. Yeah.
It's funny because when we started this podcast 7 months ago, with 100 subs, I think that was first episode. I sat down with Faraz and said, let's create a wish list of who do we want to bring on the podcast. Faraz
I wrote Blender Guru on there.
And I was like, nice. Don't even try that. Like, you can't even DM him now. Let's wait. Let's wait. And then finally today now is episode 35. It's amazing to have you on our podcast.
Yeah. When did you start, sorry?
6 months.
7 months ago. So the podcast was started back in March. Back in March.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Andrew.
No worries. I'm glad we could talk.
Yeah, 100%. We're looking forward to see when the course and everything goes out. We'll leave links to anybody who maybe comes from Unreal Engine and has never tried Blender or never heard about Poliigon. We'll leave all of the links down in the description below so you guys can check it out. Plus, the donut tutorial, the new series for Blender 4.0. By the time I guess you guys will hear and see this podcast, it's already going to be uploaded. So check that out. Plus, for anybody who's not in 3D yet and is looking for it, there's going to be a beginner course as well down the line once Andrew's in LA, I assume, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. Look forward to that. And so until the next episode, we'll see you guys later. Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.